In today's world, we are increasingly dependent on technology. Our business and personal lives rely on it, but as you've probably noticed, it's unreliable. Our computers are slow, so we end up squinting at smartphones and tablets. The jokers we pay to fix our stuff have no clue what they're doing. We live in constant fear that something's going to happen to our personal data. So we're scared into paying for fake protection that proves useless when disaster strikes. Update attacks, fake Wi-Fi, cloud control, intelligent, successful people feel intimidated by the chaos and think it's somehow their fault. If they only knew what the industry was doing to them, they'd get torches and pitchforks. If only we had someone to explain it all in plain English so we can start protecting ourselves. Oh wait, we do! It's the Computer Exorcist Podcast with your host, Mark Anthony Arena.
From the Wallace Memorial microphone in my home office, overlooking the can of worms in downtown Rochester, New York, this is the Computer Exorcist Podcast. My name is Mark Anthony Arena, and I am so glad you have joined me today for a solo teaching episode. We have two big articles today that are unfortunately pretty heavy. They're not lighthearted, so we will plow through those in a second, but I just want to say this is our 99th episode, which implies I should probably do something next week to celebrate. I'll try to get Dr. Mike scheduled in, or I'm going to talk to another one of our past guests to see if she's around, but either way, I will make sure that the 100th episode is fun. All right. This one, as we continue catching up on our backlog of articles, MSNBC.com. This is from 2021. Opinion: Why Apple Wants to Peek into Your Messages and iCloud. And this is Tiffany Lee, MSNBC columnist. Apple recently announced a new suite of features to combat the spread of, let's just call it child abuse material, to keep the, we're a family show here, I'll keep it at that. Everyone agrees that child safety is important and that companies must do more to protect children online. Actually, no, I don't agree. Child safety is important, but why do companies have to get involved? And this goes back to a Taoist principle, right? The more you try to squeeze things and change things, the worse it'll become. All right? So companies don't have to do anything to protect children online. They can only make it worse. The real thing is individuals stopping that behavior. That's the only thing that's going to stop this stuff, right? And again, that's the great divide here of people. There are half the people in the world think that you can control everything and play whack-a-mole and we can keep everything under control and suppress and oppress. And really, it's just, hey, how about you stop doing that? Because anytime you introduce any kind of system of oppression, it can never actually stop the problem, and it can never actually change that person's intent. All right? It can never actually convert the bad guys. So it's fundamental stuff here, right? Where you ain't going to hear this on another tech talk show. They're out there telling people to buy the latest printer because it has ink tanks. And no, this is fundamental philosophy issues. But no technology is ever neutral, she says. Absolutely, and that's correct. Advocates warned Apple's initiative could be the start of a wave of privacy violations. All right, thank you, you're right. Setting a dangerous precedent for the future of digital privacy rights. The fact is we need more transparency from Apple to prevent abuse of these new features. No, we don't. We need Apple to stop. We don't need transparency on what they're spying on. How about stop spying? Right? I come from a non-Microsoft, non-Apple world where if you avoid those brands, there are things out there like Mint that simply does not spy. Because A, it's none of their business, and B, it can't protect or do any good whatsoever. The first is a tool to automatically scan photos stored on your devices before they're uploaded to iCloud. And that's another thing right there. Most people aren't aware that their photos are being sucked out of their phone and put into iCloud in the first place. All right? That in and of itself is objectionable. And so I always say the potential for abuse is huge. Well, guess what? We're not talking theoretical potential here anymore. When Apple sucks the photos out of your phone, they now scan them to make sure that you're not doing anything wrong, according to their set of morals and their set of rules, and you're not doing anything wrong to offend the Apple. Remember the commercial in 1984? There was an Apple commercial where they tried to shut down the man, right? The Orwellian man. And Apple was supposed to liberate people and make people free and happy. Well, they have become the man. They are now the machine. Okay, so Apple will suck your photos into iCloud. Now they're going to scan them and compare them to images of a database of child abuse images hosted by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. If a match is found, law enforcement may be notified. Or really, Apple, if you want something worse than law enforcement, just lock people out of their iCloud. That's a more brutal punishment. And by the way, folks, law enforcement is overwhelmed as it is. People are out there stealing cars left and right and getting away with it. So go ahead and steal cars all you want, but don't you dare offend Apple, okay? The other controversial new feature will flag explicit photos sent or received by minors using the Messages app, with an option for parents to receive notifications. All right, hang on, let's backpedal for a second. Apple said that all your messages are encrypted, and that only you and the other person can see them, and not even we can see them. But now they're scanning your iMessage to see if you're sending explicit photos. Guess what? All right? Kids are going to do this, and they're going to get away with it, and most of the time, parents don't even know how to set up the parental controls, and none of it's going to work anyways, but it will blow false alarms. It'll be really good at blowing false alarms, right? When some celebrities send each other naked pictures, that'll blow a false alarm, no problem. So again, it's good ideas by well-intended people, but it's implemented by filthy slobs who are obsessed with control and don't ever care about consequences, all right? For example, Instagram recently faced backlash when it introduced explicit content filters, which some argue lead to discriminatory blocking by creators of marginalized races and genders and backgrounds. What? So, they have an explicit content filter on Instagram. Okay, fine. That polices your content. Make sure you're not looking at naked people on Instagram. But how does that affect people of marginalized races and genders and backgrounds? I love how pea-brain journalists are obsessed with that one particular thing and use it as an excuse for everything. It's sad because I've actually resorted to using that whenever I object to a technology. Instead of using real logic, like I have been all episode here, sometimes I'll just find a loophole to say that it discriminates against marginalized genders and races. Because apparently that is a trump card. That is a way to all of a sudden get my way. If I just claim that it marginalizes races, then I'll get my way. So it's just preposterous, right? And regardless of races or what you think of all that, it's just one random thing. Right? What if I said, all right, I don't like the Instagram filter because what if it marginalizes against people who eat cornflakes in the morning? Right? It's a completely obscure, bizarre thing out of left field that has no logic. The device scanning feature is even worse. Currently, many tech platforms include safety features that monitor content for child abuse. However, most of these safety mechanisms scan content that is shared to servers or posted to sites, right? So they're only able to scan those pictures and compare them to pictures that have already been uploaded somewhere. In contrast, Apple's safety tool would scan photos saved to users' devices. All right, so they're comparing them to actual private images. Today, the justification is child safety. right? Again, there's always a justification. She's right. Tomorrow, the justification might be counterterrorism or public health or national security, right? When we begin giving up our digital rights, it's hard to turn the clock back and bring back past protections. It's funny how that works. They call it an erosion of your freedom. Look it up. It's called erosion of your freedom, right? Every day, billions and trillions of laws are made that erode your freedom, but obviously, look around you. Are they stopping the crime? Obviously not. Because, again, I'm not saying I'm for abuse and crime. I'm saying it's ineffective. Whack-a-mole is not the way to make the world a better place. Apple's device scanning feature could open the door to abuse by other parties, including state actors. Governments around the world have long called for a backdoor access to applications and devices. Governments, including illiberal and authoritarian governments, okay, well, like all the governments ever that keep wanting to erode your freedom, or worse yet, like Apple, the worst authoritarian government of all time. How about that? All right? We have faced demands that degrade the privacy of users before, and we will continue to refuse them in the future. This is basically, speaking of abuse, this is classic abusive relationship, where Apple says, we face demands that where the governments want to spy on you and we're going to refuse them. All right? So what Apple's saying is, leave us alone. Only we get to abuse our customers, not you. That's a classic abusive relationship, is it not? Any system that collects data can suffer from vulnerabilities that lead to unwanted access, including access by authoritarian governments, right? Again, Apple is the new authoritarian government. They are more brutal and ruthless because with Apple, you have no recourse. It is not a representative government. You have no recourse aside from avoiding their evil products and avoiding giving them money. Stop feeding this beast. That is the only way you're going to stop them, is by letting them dry up on their own. All right? People, I bought an Apple phone for $1,000 because my kids told me to, right? And you use it once a year to make a phone call, and you're not using any advanced features, right? For 99% of the planet, you don't need an Apple phone. All right? Go get the $49 phone if you want to use basic, most normal basic citizens. That's all they need. And as soon as I was reading this, what came to mind was the San Bernardino shooting incident, and sure enough, they do mention it here. So she says, the high-profile 2016 legal dispute with the FBI. Investigators demanded that Apple unlock an iPhone recovered from one of the suspects in the 2015 terrorist attack in San Bernardino, California, and Apple refused, advertising itself as the good tech company that preserves users' privacy, right? We're the good tech company, and we're going to protect shooters of terrorist attacks? Yeah, Apple, nice job. So we're going to abuse normal citizens who are taking pictures, right? If you take a picture of your kid in the bathtub or something, Apple will attack you and accuse you of being a child abuser, but they're going to protect shooters in the San Bernardino shooting incident. Really? Really, Apple? And you call yourself the good tech company that preserves users' privacy? So basically, they're only preserving users' privacy when they're terrorist shooters. But they don't care about your privacy when they want to do something, when they want to monitor and control you. Is that clear? It is just as likely that the bad actors they're trying to deter will get around these new features by eschewing the Messages and iCloud apps. iMessage and iCloud is what she means there. iMessage and iCloud in favor of other services. What we may end up with are tools that are both ineffective and harmful to our privacy rights. All right? That is absolutely correct, actually. So she's totally right about that. As always, the bad guys will avoid all of this, and the good guys are punished, right? Bad guys aren't using Apple iCloud. They're on other services, the millions of zillions of other services out there that are less abusive than Apple. And we all should do the same, okay? So, actually, she's pretty spot on so far. There's a couple little things here at the end that I want to criticize. one, she says, Apple must be accountable on both fronts. Congress needs to act to pass a federal privacy law. All right, so billions more laws that'll keep Apple accountable, it'll tie Apple's hands, and it'll ultra complexify Apple's job. And now that Apple's going to police your photos, now the government wants to police Apple into how they police your photos, right? Again, so whack-a-mole on top of whack-a-mole on top of whack-a-mole on top of whack-a-mole. Again, will that actually change the intent of people who are truly intending to abuse kids? Will it? No! Not at all! It'll ultra complexify the world. That is the real problem here. The real problem with all of this technology is that it's ultra complexifying the world, and it is totally ineffective at stopping or preventing crime. If you actually want to prevent crime, change the intent of these people. Again, that's such an oddly specific thing. All right? Apple is intending and attempting to monitor and control every aspect of everyone's life. And all you can say is, well, what if people eat cornflakes and Lucky Charms on a Wednesday, then they might get abused from it, right? It's some totally off-the-wall, left-field thing that has nothing to do with anything, and that's all you got? You don't object to the fact that Apple wants to control every possible aspect of our lives, what I call micro-controlling? That's the real issue here, folks, and that's why Apple's going to get away with it. Because people are so focused on tiny, stupid details that they allow Apple to take over the bigger picture, right? To go underneath and scoop up control fundamentally. So look, just stop using these big tech products and you won't have any issues. You won't have the complexity, you won't have the absolute injustice, you won't have the spying, you won't have the brutality of Apple. Just stop using big tech products. Again, Apple used to want to liberate us back in 1984, but now they have turned into the very thing they were trying to combat. Hope that makes sense. Please warn your friends about this stuff, right? In an attempt to curb abuse, Apple has become the abuser. And it starts out with good intentions, but then they end up dangling this thing in front of you, right? We're going to prevent abuse, and they dangle it in front of people, and people go, oh yeah, that's pretty good, that's a good idea, yeah. And then they use it to abuse us. I'm a huge fan of the Dune novels, and the first one is just your normal bad guy fights good guy, and then good guy ends up triumphing, and that's great. The second book was Dune, Children of Dune, and then there was Dune Messiah, and in the rest of the books they talk about how this good guy triumphs in the beginning, but then his message is twisted and people end up doing bad things in his name, right? So he created a monster, and that's what's going on here. Again, don't let someone dangle something in front of you, just like the scammers, right? Just like we talked about so many times. Scammers will dangle some fear in front of you, and then you go for it because you think it's something that needs to be addressed. Okay? Not everything needs to be addressed. All right. So let's do another one here. One last one. This one is quite interesting. This is actually a recent one. And this is from listeners Matt and Cindy, and they sent this in August of 2024. Pig butchering. Online scams are proliferating. Here's why they work so well. And this is Wall Street Journal. Pig butchering. Do you get unsolicited text messages from people you don't know? Be forewarned. If you respond, you could be falling for a particularly dangerous online scam that has found victims around the world. Some unfortunate individuals have lost millions of dollars. That's interesting. Normally it's like, oh, they've taken millions of dollars in total, but apparently individuals have lost millions. That's interesting. There was a Wall Street Journal Tech Live Cybersecurity Conference, and there was a guy named Troy with the Global Anti-Scam Organization, and a guy named Jamil with the FBI. So they interviewed Troy and Jamil. So here's how it works. Wall Street Journal starts out by asking, why pig butchering? And Troy says, it's not our term. In Chinese, it's 杀猪盘, or pig killing plate, or pig butchering. What makes the scam so effective is they want to build trust, so you think they're a love interest or business partner. Once they build that trust, they can talk to you about how they've made a lot of money in cryptocurrencies and how you could too. So it's a variation on the romance scam. They propose to make money together. The rise in cryptocurrency, which is great, by the way, but it's opened the door for scammers to take your money instantaneously. With cryptocurrency, it's almost immediate and it's gone, right? Same thing with the support scammers that I say all the time. If you've been victimized by any kind of foreign actor in any kind of way, there is nothing your government can do. Don't even bother calling the sheriff because there's nothing they can do. The only time you should call the sheriff is if you want to tell the sheriff to consult with me and I can teach their department about prevention, right? But once it happened, it's done. There's nothing we can do. All right, so with support scams and with pig butchering scams, same deal. Once your money's gone, it is gone. And again, this whole rise in cryptocurrency, it's because it's so ultra complex that they get away with bamboozling people, okay? Because it's so ultra complex, people go, oh, I heard cryptocurrency is new and good, therefore I should invest and I'll just trust anyone. Okay, so Troy says, the social engineering aspect is very powerful. I have stories that are very sad. Folks who have been warned that they're getting scammed, and yet because they've been socially engineered so much, they continue to invest, right? And that's like the sunk cost thing, or they always say it's harder to tell someone they've been scammed than to actually scam them. I've shown up in a couple of cases where I told, there was one case where I told the lady, hey, look, your grandkid is okay. Your grandkid is not actually being held captive in South America and you don't actually need to pay anyone. And she didn't believe us until we brought the grandkid over to her house. Right? Because it's easier to scam someone. It's easier to show up with an idea. The initial idea is what they'll believe first. Okay? They're looking for everybody, but they prefer titles like doctor, dentist, or IT professional, or CEO. That's hilarious. Apparently, IT professionals are the least tech savvy, and I'll totally agree with that. IT professionals fall for all sorts of dumb things, like the DRM scandal, and the support scandal, and the update attacks, and everything. So Jamil says, I remember arresting a hacker out of Tunisia. A 19-year-old kid that was able to bypass levels of security within Department of Defense. And he took down a few banks and he was wreaking havoc across the world. Well, it's, in his defense, it's Microsoft technology is naked. But he explained to me, hackers are stupid. They go after the systems where human beings have way more vulnerabilities. And I would actually add, hackers are lazy, right? They don't actually sit there guessing your password. They use other more lazy ways. So they have the keys to the treasure chest, and it's easy to turn off people's mental firewall. All right, and that's a great way of putting it, right? Instead of breaking into some technology, if you call someone up and say you're there to help and say you're going to make them money and you say that you're going to give them tech support or whatever, then people drop their guard. They let their guard down, okay? The mental firewall, as it were. It's a letting their guard down is the equivalent of a computer firewall, okay? And Jamil goes on. Try to think of a time you were in a relationship where the threat of your spouse or significant other leaving you caused you to do pretty much anything to keep them around. The scam evokes the same emotion. It could be love, fear, or panic. Your ability to think critically is shut off, right? You're thinking with your old brain and you're not thinking with your conscious prefrontal cortex. So Wall Street Journal says, sometimes when I've talked to scam victims, it's like the more they have invested, the harder it is for them to believe they've been taken, right? The deeper you go, right? It's, well, I've already put this much into it, so I better keep going in case, in the off chance that I could have a big payday, right? But in reality, and this happens in life too, sometimes you just need to stop and drop it. And the more you go on, the worse you get. You just have to leave it alone and stop picking at the scab, as I say. Okay? And Jamil, it's the stigma. The victims can't fathom that they could have been so stupid, so to speak. So they hold on to this hope that it had to have been real. The love was real, and the scammers use information that they glean from your communications to validate you in a way that no one else can. Okay, so here's another thing they're doing. They're doing a love scam here, not only to get money out of you, but they're also getting details about you, and then using those details to then impersonate you and get a mortgage, let's say. That's really interesting. Is there something you can say or do that'll snap them out of it? Troy says, people are people. We've had victims we've warned more than once, and they continued to give. And I've seen that before, where they'll keep falling for different scams. And I know people who do this. There's a couple 100,000 of these scammers operating throughout Southeast Asia. Okay, so that's where this particular scam is coming from. A lot of these scammers are trafficked human beings, and that's another level. It's another dimension to this thing, okay? These are scammers, and they're scamming people, but they are actually being held prisoner, and they're being forced to scam people. So their will to succeed is intense because their life or their family's life depends on it. So they're being forced to scam people. They are constantly fine-tuning their strategies. These scammers contribute something like half their country's GDP, so the local government is not going to do much. Wow, that's fascinating. Does the FBI know who's running these scams? And Jamil says, yes, absolutely. But there are no treaties between those countries and the U.S., all right? So again, folks, if this stuff is going to happen, and there's nothing your sheriff or law enforcement can do, all right? The only thing that'll stop this is you and me, is awareness and prevention, right? I love saying that. I've given a lot of speeches lately at libraries, and when I describe support scams, at the end of it, I say, who's going to put a stop to this? Right? It's not Norton or McAfee, that's for darn sure. Who's going to put a stop to this? It's not even me. I point at the audience. I say, it's you. It's all of you. You can do something to make the world a better place. You can warn your friends about this. And that empowers folks, right? It clears it up. I explain the issues to them clearly, and they're more empowered, and they can go out there and raise awareness. That's the only thing that'll stop this, folks. Okay? And even believe me, there are plenty of times when government officials are able to successfully raid some scam operation. These fraud factories, as they're called. But what happens? Number one, the damage is already done to those individuals. Number two, they'll make a new scam operation tomorrow. There's a lot of people out there in the world with nothing to do, especially because AI is going to automate everything. Now we're going to have most of the people sitting around with nothing to do, scamming each other, because AI took their jobs. All right? So, if you get the wrong number and you respond saying wrong number, they're going to say, oh, so sorry, I hope I'm not bothering you. But then they say, oh, what's your name? Where do you live? What do you do? And they try to befriend you. They're looking for a weakness. Oh, are you single? Okay, then your weakness is romance. Oh, are you in business? Oh, okay, then your weakness is money, and I could be your business partner. And Troy says, I've seen screenshots of their chats. They can chat in Chinese, and then the translator will show up in your native language. And then when you translate to them, it shows up in Chinese. So they don't even have to know English. And at the top, there's a mini dossier about you, where it says your first name, your age, how many homes you have, what kind of retirement money and 401ks, and what kind of investments you have. As you continue to chat, you're actually being sent to multiple people chatting with you. You might not even recognize it. They're all in the compound, and everything they do is monitored, so if the person is there against their will, if they don't chat with you and scam you, they could be beaten. So that's interesting. They just rotate people who are working on you throughout the day, right? And they continue to pick away at you, and they just look at the dossier. Oh, okay, this is Mark Arena, and he has X number of cars, and he has a really disgusting, gross house that he's finally starting to remodel, and he used to have retirement until the stock market fell. So I wouldn't even notice that it's different people talking to me, because they have a little dossier, and they brush up on me, and okay, cool, I remember this guy. All right, let's keep scamming him. Okay, here's another hugely, hugely important point. The messages come on legitimate apps. What can be done to mitigate this? All right, again, just like support scams, they're using fully legalized remote support tools like AnyDesk and TeamViewer and LogMeIn and UltraViewer and so on. Okay? Same thing here. They're going to talk to you through Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, right? And first your telephone, right? Your normal telephone texting. And then they might move you over to some other thing like Telegram or whatever, and Signal. I love Signal, right? It's a beautiful way of communicating, but it's none of these technologies can ever or should ever detect your intent. Okay? That's not technology's job, folks, and I really hope that eventually someday you people get this. That this industry understands. Technology's job is not to police people. All right? You're just there to direct the traffic. You're not there to police people, right? Rewind to a few minutes ago when we were talking about Apple's brutality and their attempt to police people. What can be done, right? If they're on legitimate apps, they're not using shady communication apps. What can be done? Again, technology doesn't help. It's awareness. No matter what method a scammer uses to talk to you, telephone or app or whatever, you have to be aware. That's it. It's very easy. Jamil says, until a collective strategy is put together, you need to be aware of the red flags. Thank you. I don't care about strategy, actually. Strategy ain't gonna help. Awareness is the only thing. We've all gotten the text message that says hi, and that message has a fundamentally different feeling to somebody who's elderly and widowed or lonely. That has a profound impact on them. If they want you to invest in cryptocurrency, do a little research on the site. No, don't do research on the site, right? If some scammer tells you to go eat at some restaurant, are you going to trust them and do research on the restaurant? No, don't do any of that. Just ignore them. They're a scammer. Don't do anything they say. Don't even bother doing the research. And some of the scam sites actually register. All right, and apparently they're registering as brokers with the cryptocurrency. All right, so that kind of makes sense there. So they're saying, hey, why don't you invest in Joe Blow's cryptocurrency? And we're set up as a broker. So now it's fully legalized and authorized, right? Again, having a gold star sticker on your forehead, as I like to say, doesn't mean that you have good intentions. If I'm a cryptocurrency broker and I want to actually meet friends at a cocktail party and say, hey, look, if you are sophisticated investors and you know what you're doing, then hey, come invest with me and I'll get a commission. That's cool. That's fine. All right. But these bad guys are approaching senior citizens who have no clue what's going on and telling them we're going to make a lot of money together. And then they're getting a commission. They're registering with the cryptocurrency sites and they're getting a commission. Right? Again, it's pea-brain IT guys who think that registration is a magical deterrent or a magical validation, right? They love validations. That doesn't do anything. Just like the shake and stir scandal that I talked about a couple weeks ago. Bad guys just go ahead and register. They go through the motions. They do what we tell them, and they register. And now they're doing this with impunity. Hello. Troy. They were using apps like MetaTrader, a foreign exchange trading app. It's legitimate. You could go on this app and think you're doing something legitimate, but you're actually sending money to the scam broker website. All right, so now they're impersonating these sites, okay? But again, they love using legitimate platforms to lure people in because, again, computer guys will say, oh, well, it's legitimate. It passes muster. They can do whatever they want, right? Bad guys are now signing up for PayPal legitimately and then sending people PayPal invoices. They are real bona fide PayPal invoices, but they are meant to deceive you, okay? And again, no computer guy in the world can ever detect malintent or deception. All right, they just think because you get a gold star sticker on your forehead, it must be good. All right, why can't you stop these guys? Jamil, they'll have one major domain with multiple subdomains. So we take one website down, another pops up, and another pops up, and another pops up, and another pops up, and another pops out. Our strategy is to go after the kingpin. Well, have you hit any kingpins yet? We have. The indictments, a lot of them are still under seal, but tech support scams are a big part of this. We took down 3 tech support buildings near Calcutta less than a year ago. 3? So 3 down and a few billion more scammer operations to go. All right? Look, going after the kingpin is obviously better than going after the individuals. It's more effective. But you know what's better than going after the kingpin? Because guess what? You're going to play whack-a-mole and another kingpin mole is going to pop right up. You know what's better than that? Is raising awareness. So you could have billions and trillions of scammers out there. But if all the senior citizens in America are aware of what's going on and defend themselves, that is the only time that this will be stopped. Do you understand? Could the tech companies be doing more here? Well, the final question is, could the tech companies be doing more? Well, indeed they could. Instead of playing whack-a-mole, they can use their power to raise awareness. Hope that makes sense, folks. My name is Mark Anthony Arena. You can buy the preview edition of my next book on my website right now, thecomputerexorcist.com. Hope you love it. Tell all your friends. Talk to you next week.